Okay, kids, it's time for another episode of the Fueled by Weird podcast, the only podcast that's mastered the art of walking like an encryption. I'm Chris Daly, and today I'd like to welcome Joshua Rubin to the show. Joshua, how's it going, man?
How you doing? Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that our mutual friend Gerald got us in touch. Gerald's a great guy. I've had
Yeah.
him on the show before, and I'm excited to talk to you.
I mean, I will say I was a fan of Gerald von Stoddard, and when I discovered that he was a neighbor living like 10 minutes from me,
Oh,
I was kind
wow.
of blown away. I was like, dude, there's like amazing comic book community in my area.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
I'm also really close to the one of the founders of Invader Comics. And like uh just like he's like introduced me to this incredible network of comic creators around here. I live in upstate New York in the Hudson
Mhm.
Valley. And I had no idea when I got into this that I was going to find people close to me that I could learn so much from. And it's been like amazing just to be welcomed into this local group.
I'll have to see. I've got a few friends that make comics in New York, so I'll have to see if I can figure out proximity wise to you how close they are. You said from Invader Comics, was that Mike, I want to say? Yeah,
Kevin.
Mike. Okay.
So
I
yeah, one,
just
three.
I just recently became friends with Michael Perkins. He was introduced to me from another used to be a friend, but then wasn't a friend, but is kind of a friend again. I'm not really
A
sure
friend of me.
what I'm not really sure how that works yet.
Okay.
But yeah, this acquaintance used to work as like PR for Invader Comics, and Michael was trying to find out, who are some good podcasts to get in touch with that he hadn't been on in touch with before. So he kind of connected him with me. So I've been kind of talking to him a little bit because he's also, I don't know if he's one of the founders of Invader.
I think so. Yeah,
I
there's three
know,
of them.
okay, I know Michael works for Invader, but I wasn't sure in what capacity.
They're cool.
Um,
They're doing smart things. And
yeah.
this gentleman, Kevin, I was actually connected to by my local comic book store, Mega Brain Comics. And they Kevin like totally like met me for coffee and I had so many questions. Like 2 years ago, I was like, how do I start a comic? Like where do I begin? Like how do I learn to write a comic? How do I find an artist? How do I publish a comic? Like I've really gone on a whole journey from like that first like, local coffee to now like publishing a comic in the next few weeks.
That's
It's
cool.
very exciting.
That's a cool story. But yeah, I'll have to get a list together of all of my comic book friends that live in New York and just kind of
Sweet.
see in proximity to you how close they are. Maybe you guys can get
That'd be
together and
great.
talk shop.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
Absolutely. All right. So usually I like to start these things off with an icebreaker question. So
Sure.
today's icebreaker question is, would you rather spend a weekend in tropical paradise or a snow haven?
Um, well, as someone who lives in a snow haven, obviously I would like the opposite. I don't know how I ended up here. I am all about tropical paradise. If I could live the rest of my life in 70-degree weather with no rain,
Oh
with
my
my
God.
my feet in the sand, I would be very happy.
That sounds incredible.
You?
I too am in the same kind of situation.
Yeah.
For someone who doesn't like the snow, I live in a completely wrong place to do that because
Um,
in Idaho, the common saying is if you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes.
yeah.
There's been some days where we've had all four seasons in one day. Um, one day it'll be, nice and warm. The next day we'll have 3, 4 inches of snow. It's ridiculous. But yes, I'm 100% with you. 70-ish degree weather. A little bit of rain, I don't mind. But yeah, it's 70 degree-ish weather, light wind. Like if that was just a consistent thing.
Body temperature, just body temperature. That's all I
Perfect.
want. Yeah.
Perfect.
I
I'm
was
right
going to
there with
say,
you.
I lived in Washington State for a while, and that
Yeah.
place like, has these microclimate zones,
Hmm.
like where it will change as you move through the space. And I remember driving to work once on the freeway. It was like 70 degree and sunny. There was fog up ahead of me. I drove into the fog, came out into a snowstorm where it was
Oh my
literally
God.
snowing, pulled, went through the fog again, and came out into like 70 degree and sunny. It was the craziest thing. It was like
That's
these
wild.
little tiny pockets that just move around.
That's wild. Yeah,
Yeah,
I at one time thought about moving to Oregon or Washington because I thought that was kind of like the perfect weather, but then that was that was single me with no kids and a
right.
really long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say, I've been, in New York for 6 years now.
Mhm.
And I'd been West Coast for a long time. Met a
Sure.
California girl, had my children on the West Coast. And now that I'm back in regular snow, the novelty is kind of wearing off, but
Oh,
I've
sure.
also realized there's a beauty to it.
Hmm.
Uh, really like, finding those moments of just appreciating like when the snow comes and it's crystal
Yeah.
and the kids are still young enough to go sledding and there's a lot of joy in it, but I'm also happy it doesn't last very long.
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually of the opinion where if snow would just land on the grass and
Hmm.
stay off of everything else, I'd be perfectly fine with that. Because shoveling snow and mowing grass are two things that I absolutely hate more than anything else in this world. And so
Yeah.
if I didn't have to do either one of those, I would be very excited.
All right, I will argue with you on that one. I love mowing the lawn and I love shoveling snow. They're
It,
both like there's something about like just having like physical work to do as a writer where I
sure.
spend most of my time in my head,
Yeah.
having something to go out and do that like is connected to the ground like that. I love it. I love the physical effort of clearing the driveway of snow. And then, we have like a 4 acres now. So I've got
Oh,
like a
wow.
tractor I can like, mow, drive around mowing the lawn with. And like my wife like threatens me. She'll be like, you've let the grass get too long. I'm gonna call Steve and pay him. And I'm like, no, don't do it. She's like, you're too busy. You have to. I was like, no, I will find time to mow the lawn. I
Yeah.
promise.
See, if I had a tractor, that might make it a little more enjoyable. But
Yeah.
my lawn isn't big enough to justify me having a big mower like that to ride on. Plus, my front lawn is kind of at a slant because our house is up on kind of like a hill, kind of.
Oh yeah.
Um, so
That's hard.
it'd be kind of complicated. It's nice for if it rains really hard because then nothing floods out because I'm up here.
But
But yeah.
going up a hill, pushing it, oh, that's gotta suck. I'm sorry.
It's not a super sharp. It's a very kind of a slanted incline, so it's not super sharp, but it's not super bad, but it does make things interesting. But it goes up and then it kind of, tops off. So there's part of my lawn that's flat, but then there's part of it that's slanted down. It makes the driveway shoveling awful because it's just like I have to be careful
Uh,
not to slip and fall flat on my back, which I've done multiple times.
dude, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. That's why I always try to get out and shovel before anyone drives on it, because if I can do that, it's not so bad. But once it gets
Not
driven
back
on,
down. Yeah.
the tracks are rough.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
I mean, we're
Right.
finally out of that. We're getting into warmer weather now. We kind of had
Right.
a weird spring where it was very kind of cold and rainy. But yeah, now we're hitting 70, mid 70, high 70, low 80s here next few days. So,
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
it's good stuff.
Thank God. I know.
Yeah.
I just rented a lake house for the weekend with my parents and my
Oh,
kids.
nice.
Yeah, just go out. It's finally warm enough. Go out on a kayak, go to a farmer's market. Yeah, I'm super excited.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, sir. So when you're not, sitting writing, games, comics, that stuff, what do you like to do in your spare time? What are some of your hobbies?
It does feel like I spend most of my time at my computer writing games and comics, and now learning the business of selling comics. But I loved rock climb
Oh,
is one of
nice.
the things to do. And my teenage daughter has gotten into it as well, which
That's
is
cool.
amazing because now after 50 years, I have learned to set climbs. And we live close to the Shawangunk Mountains, the Gunks, which are some of the best cliffs in the world.
That's cool.
And for 5 years now, I've been like, God, I should be climbing in the Gunks. It's right there. But I've always been a gym climber. I only can
Sure.
go climb outside when someone else is setting the climbs. I finally learned. last season. I finally learned how. I finally bought my own ropes and went out with my daughter, and she's big enough now and skilled enough that she can belay me, so I can be, 50 feet up a rock and feel pretty secure that she's not going to drop me. And I finally
Nice.
looked at the end of last season, so we went for the first time in the spring yesterday, and
Cool.
and it's that is like my most favorite thing to do, to just be outside, be on a wall. It's like that incredible mix of like just like puzzle solving mixed with incredible physical exertion that challenges you to pull yourself up, while holding incredibly tiny holds and trying to, that mix of exercise and brain power is just wonderful. Plus being outside. Love
Yeah,
it.
for sure. Plus, I mean, the fact that you got a teenage girl to do something that you're interested in too is pretty impressive.
Thank you.
Because I also have a teenage daughter, and yeah, she doesn't really like anything that I like. I mean, I'm a big fan of pro wrestling, and
Yeah.
she says she likes it. Um, but yeah, I'm still not 100% sure. But yeah,
She
it's
humors you.
sometimes I wonder if that's what it is, because sometimes she's really into it, but sometimes she's kind of preoccupied, which is fine. But yeah, getting a teenage girl to be interested in something you're interested in is very, very impressive.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Very cool. All right, man. So I want to take a quick trip in the Wayback Machine and find out exactly what it was that got you inspired to become a writer in the first place.
Oh, wow. That's a good question, man. Um, my dad was a writer. I
Okay.
think or is a writer, but he doesn't write anymore. Although he says he started writing again this week for the first time in many years. So we'll see
That's
what he.
awesome.
But having that inspiration was there. He was also early on, he was a film curator. So he would, at the library and at the museum, he would show like, art house, European classics. And then at home, we lived in a big commune in an ashram in Indiana out in the boonies. And he would show films there, but they would be all Doc Savage and James Bond and Bruce Lee and all these action movies. So I grew up seeing both of those and just being totally inspired and wanting to make movies originally. But I think that I remember there was a young authors contest in DeKalb, Illinois, when I was like 8 years old. And I entered this contest with a book that I totally plagiarized from another kid's book I had read, and I won.
Oh, wow. Very
And I
cool.
thought, oh, wow, that felt good. And so then the next year I tried writing one on my own. And I was really into D&D and, really into aliens and really into like, so it was kind of it was this, Loki was the villain and Steve Martin was in it. And, like just, it was a mashup of everything that I loved. And I won again. And I thought, okay, I must be good at this. And so I think getting praise early on was probably a big part of, yeah, what led me to think maybe I could do this. And I pretty much knew from that point on that it was what I was good at and what I wanted to do.
That's awesome. So, we've kind of talked a little bit already that, you've written for quite a few video games, some very big notable ones. How did your writing career lead you from, the Young Authors Contest to writing for video games?
I mean that's a long story.
Okay.
But I will tell you some of it. I think I was not aiming at video games. I was aiming at movies. I think I knew from a young age that's what I wanted to do. I was obsessed with Spielberg and James Cameron, and that's who I thought I would be when I grew up. Um, and I started, I went through a phase as a novelist. I was really obsessed with, Paul Auster and Milan Kundera and Philip K. Dick, sci-fi. And I wrote a novel in Paris in my 20s. And then I was working in New York City. I was managing video stores, if you can remember those. And
Absolutely. Hmm.
there were, I got to curate the film set, the art house films of these video stores, which was really nice. While working as a journalist, I was actually making money working for 360hiphop.com, which was Russell Simmons' hip hop website, and I was
Oh,
their
wow.
entertainment editor. And so I was writing all about hip hop and movies. And so I had gone from like writing novels to writing writing journalism, and like both times it was like, okay, well, these are very different languages of writing.
Sure.
And I wanted to write a screenplay, and I thought, okay, well, how do I do this? And I remember when I first started writing a screenplay and realizing it was an entirely different language, that I had to learn all new techniques and new things, and I had to throw so much out. Um, no longer, writing novels was so much about description, so much about kind of, this moment of kind of taking in everything around you and like, dreaming up exactly the right words to say it with, to translate your idea into the head of your reader. In film, you throw that all away. In
Hmm.
film, it's not at all about description. It's purely about, where do you point the camera? What is the thing that you're looking at right now? And just expressing that in a way that the director can then describe it with images, and describe it, in a way that is the medium. This is only a step along the way.
Hmm.
So I was very lucky. The very first film screenplay that I wrote, I spent like 4 years on it. I mean, I was going back to it again and again. I would take like 6 months to write a draft very slowly, show it to my dad, who would then tell me how terrible it was and rip it
Oh,
apart.
gosh.
And he was a very harsh writing teacher, but he was always right. And I went through this 4 or 5 drafts with him. And every time he would rip it apart, I would say, I suck at this. And I would throw it away. And I would go back to working at a video store, and writing articles. But then I would come back to it. And finally, like after like 4 years, I felt like I had something good. I think there was a moment where he finally said, okay, you're done. And I think at that moment, I started submitting it to contests. And I won the Nickel Fellowship, which is the contest by the Academy Awards for Best Unproduced Screenplay. And suddenly that opened up this whole new world of Hollywood to me. And I was able to go out and like have my choice of agents and producers. It was really incredible.
Yeah.
Um, and I then managed to sustain a film career for 10 years, selling films and getting hired to write films without ever getting one made. It
Wow.
was kind of a classic Hollywood story. But for 10 years, I was there selling TV shows and movies, and, always getting so close to getting something made. And, that moment when I first arrived with my script, and it was this kind of European art house film. It was about a guy, who's like a 50-year-old writer in the south of France, who discovers that the first girl he ever loved in the south of France has died. And it starts kind of making him question everything he thinks he knows about love. And,
Wow.
people were like, this is, beautiful, but no one's ever going to make this. What do what do you really want to do? And I was like, well, I've got a lot of sci-fi ideas. And they're like, yes, write us that. So I ended up like, kind of creating all of these kind of sci-fi projects that were kind of pulling, from all of the, everything I'd ever read and ever seen, and really, a lot of very kind of Philip K. Dick like um stories. I really love stories that are about kind of pulling the rug out from under you, stories that are really
Sure.
about making you question your reality. And so this was a lot of what I was producing. And I think it was, I'd gone from European art house to like really heady sci-fi. And I think the reaction in Hollywood was constantly like, these are amazing. No one will ever make these. Like it was constantly this sense of like, this is just not Hollywood. And I was having trouble finding my audience. But what happened was that out of the blue, I got a phone call from a guy who I had worked for 10 years earlier at the very beginning of my career. And he says, I've become a video game writer now, and we have a script that's launching in 6 months, and I haven't written anything past the first level. And you're the only writer I've ever liked working with. And he basically, he invited me to come write this game with him. And so I said, "Well, what's the game?" And he says, "Assassin's Creed 2." And
Wow.
and of course, I hadn't had a PlayStation for 10
Yeah.
years because I never thought I could have a career and a PlayStation at the same time. So I said, "What's that?" And he was like, "Oh my God, go ask a 12-year-old." So I literally had to go call my 12-year-old cousin, and he's like, "Holy fucking shit, wow." And I'm like, "Oh, so this is a good thing." And this was the moment where I got to tell my wife I have to go buy a PlayStation for work, which was like
Wow.
one of the great moments ever in my
Right?
career.
Absolutely.
And so got to write this game with him, learn, I mean, what an amazingly lucky entry into the video game world. I got to play
Absolutely.
Ubisoft and like, sit down at every desk and just be like, what do you do? Like, what's a designer? How do you do this? What do you mean you're building an environment? Like, what is, and I got to learn on the job while doing this incredibly high level thing. And that game came out, and I was huge, and I went to my agent and I was like, I've been writing movies, TV for 10 years. Now I suddenly have a credit that has made more money than Avatar, which came out the same year. Like,
Right.
what's this going to do for my film career? And he was like, nothing. Nobody cares.
Wow.
So, this is, 15 years ago now, 2009. So,
Yeah, yeah.
different time, I think. But at the time, it really, like, it was a disconnect. And so, luckily, there was a panel at the WGA for video game writers that I got invited to go talk on. And I connected with Amy Hennig, who was the lead of Naughty Dog at the time. And she kind of took me under her wing and said, I let me teach you how to do this. And she kind of pointed me at GDC, the Game Developers Conference. And I went up there, and I just started like going to these panels, learning about what is game writing. And it just blew my mind open because it was like suddenly a whole new language of writing to learn with a whole new set of rules. And suddenly it wasn't about description, it wasn't about character, it was about agency, and it was about possibility spaces and story magnets and all of these new ideas. And like my mind started exploding because I had always been like so excited about like breaking narrative structure and tearing it open and figuring out like like new ways of telling stories, and here was yet another new way. So I got really really into what are all the ways that we can make a world that just sucks you into it and gives you power in that world and makes you like desperate to want to explore that world and gives you the power to do that. And so that's what I've been completely focused on for the past 15 years. And I've gotten to work on amazing games like Destiny and Telltale's Walking Dead and Game of Thrones and Outriders and like all of these different kinds of, and then really obscure games as well. Like I've been really into VR, and VR kind of has yet another language of writing, but this one is really a language that hasn't been written yet. I mean, it is such a new medium, and how you tell a story where you are literally there in the world. There's no way to tell a story that's a sit back story in VR. Like it's a
Right.
completely different language. And so I've gotten to do a number of incredible VR games. Like I did a sequel to Groundhog Day, the Bill Murray movie,
Oh,
as a
wow.
time loop video game in VR. And I've had like more obscure games that have won awards and opened at Venice. And now I'm working a lot in location-based VR. There's a Black Mirror location-based VR project that I've just written where you get to actually go into and be in the Black Mirror world. I'm
Wow.
working with other IP I can't talk about, but the idea
Right.
now of entering into a world of virtual reality where everything you see you can touch, and that it's completely teleportation, complete transformation of kind of, from writing novels to holodeck now. is been, this amazing journey. And in the midst of all this, now I'm, writing comic books.
That's so awesome. Like, so to go back a little bit, I remember video stories very vividly. I know my wife and I used to visit the Hollywood Video next to our house quite frequently. Back when we were first together. Um, we tried to tell my kids about how awesome video stores were, but they're just like, I don't get the appeal. Like, it was such a cool thing to do to like go on a Friday night, grab some movies, grab some video games, grab some snacks. You had your whole weekend made. It was just a magical time.
Yeah.
Um,
Talk about like analog, right? I mean, even though that was
yeah,
digital, but just, physically going into the world to get your media, your entertainment and bringing it
yeah,
home was like that was magical already.
yep,
It wasn't it, the communal thing of theaters was already fading,
yeah.
but you still had to leave your home. You still had to leave
Yeah.
your home, see other people, and I don't know, things on shelves is something we've lost so much of.
Yeah, my almost 10-year-old, it blows her away. Like you actually like you couldn't just like click a couple buttons and watch your movie. You had to like go get it and bring it home. And I'm like, yeah, man, it doesn't just serve it up. And my oldest daughter, she just like, that sounds boring. And I was like, okay, well, anyway, I'm gonna go dust off my rocking chair and just sit and get old now. But yeah, Assassin's Creed 2, that's awesome. I know out of the original trilogy, that was definitely one of my favorites and a lot of other people's favorites. So that's very, very cool.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I've been, trying for years to figure out why that game turned out so well and why people connect to it so much.
Yeah, like I don't know what it is. Like the first one was like a good intro, but it didn't really kind of grab me. The third one kind of just didn't feel as good as the other two, but that second one, like that just like pulled you in and just kept you there. It was so good.
I think one of the theories I've come up with recently is that it was because it started with Ezio as a child. And
Okay.
because you got to grow up with him, because he wasn't, he didn't start by playing, a hero. He wasn't Duke Nukem. He was just this, obnoxious 20-year-old kid,
Yeah.
well, younger first, and then, seeing his whole family die. And, you immediately like connected to him on such a human level and
Yeah.
see someone who, goes into an adventure ha as a vulnerable kid needing to grow up. I think it occurred to me that that was very similar to why people connect to Walking Dead, because you're starting with Clementine and
Yeah.
you're seeing her grow up, and there's something about getting to know a character from a very vulnerable place to a place of heroism that really is emotional for people because we all experience that.
Absolutely. All right. So, we've got, your transition from all the way up to comic books now, or all the way up to video games. How did you make the jump from video games and, VR games over to comic books?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I've always been a comic book nerd. I think, like
Sure.
that's been part of me forever.
Yeah.
If I didn't have this background on, I would show you all the comic books behind me. Um, but I think that it always felt like something that I didn't know how to do. It just felt like, it felt scary. Like how do you get into that?
Sure.
Um, I think I've stumbled my way through my writing career a lot, like working on something for a long time, by myself, or, just being, someone reaching out and pulling me in to something. I've never really known how to do it. Um, but this was a moment where, I think, becoming a middle-aged dude and having a moment of like, you know, realizing like all of these like incredible sci-fi stories that I was creating like in my 20s and my 30s, like all of these movies that I wanted to make are
Yeah.
still in me. And, with hundreds of pages, of thousands in cases of like incredible like story development and they're like burning holes in my pocket, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I reached a moment where I was like, look, I've had amazing opportunities in video games, but I've always been a small part of a large team. And I don't want to have to wait for anybody to say yes anymore. I don't want to have to, bring something to a studio and pitch it and try to sell it. I want to just make it. And we live in a time now because of the internet and because of Kickstarter, where there is really a world where you can just make something and put it out there and connect to your audience. And that kind of had just changed everything. And so as I saw this happening around me, I thought, now is the time because it's not going to happen later. It needs to happen now. Now is the
Yeah,
time to fuck yes projects.
absolutely.
And and so I just said, okay, how do I write a comic book? What is this new language? And how do I sell a comic book? And how do I do Kickstarter? And I just spent, a year reading everything I could and talking to everyone I could and just doing tons and tons of immersing myself in the research. And then I took my favorite of my ideas that I've always wanted to play with and started putting it down on paper and breaking it out and learning, page by page and then panel by panel how you tell a story in this new language. Um, it's been fascinating and it's been incredibly exciting watching this thing come alive.
That's awesome. And yeah, becoming a middle-aged man really is kind of a kick in the teeth when it's like, I've got so many things I want to do. I need to
Yeah.
stop waiting around for permission to do them and just do them
Oh yeah.
because I'm not getting any younger.
I wish I knew it when I was younger. I
Oh,
feel like,
absolutely. Absolutely. For some reason, like you always kind of know when you're younger, but it doesn't really kind of kick in and hit you really until you're there. Then it's like, oh yeah, yeah, I got stuff I want to do, and I don't necessarily have all the time in the world left to do it. So if I'm gonna do it, I need to do it now.
absolutely. I think all through like my film career, I never had a fire lit under my ass. I
Sure.
always felt like, and maybe because, I won that award early on, I was
Right.
like, oh, well, this will be easy.
Yeah.
And the fact that it took 4 years to write a script, I thought, oh, well, that's how long it takes. So my second script took me like 3 years. And like, no, you people write scripts in 3 months. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
you need to do. So I was not in a hurry during my film career. But then my video game career also coincided with the birth of my daughter. And so suddenly, like I had a video games were a job as well as, a new industry to explore. And
Yeah.
so, suddenly that fire was lit under my ass to, build a career now in order to feed my kids.
Yeah.
So that was a very different thing, but it was really like only once I, really started like investing myself passionately in my work and in building my career that I thought, God, if I had had this level of energy during my 10 years in Hollywood, maybe I could have been Spielberg.
For
But,
sure.
I
And
wasn't there.
I think it's when we're younger we just kind of think we have that, oh, we've got plenty of time mentality. There's so much time. We don't have to rush anything. Then one minute you're a 25-year-old kid, the next minute you're a 40-year-old man with kids and you're like, "Oh man, like I don't have a whole bunch of time left. I really need to like get cracking."
The transition from childhood to adulthood is very slow and then very sudden.
Yes. And one minute your kids are little, and the next minute your kids are about to graduate high school, and you just think, where'd the time go?
It's incredible. And you
Yeah.
you want them to like, learn all the lessons that you know now, and you can't teach them. They won't hear it, that they have to go through it.
No,
And
I'm
it's
having that problem right now with my oldest daughter. She'll ask for help, and we'll try to help her, and she just argues with you all the time. And it's like, if you would just listen, like, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm trying to help you not make the same mistakes we did. And it's like, as bad as you want them not to make the same mistakes,
yeah.
sometimes you got to just kind of like reel it in and just sometimes they need to make mistakes in order to learn. And then maybe they'll realize you're right. Maybe I don't know, but it's a real rough lesson I'm trying to learn right now.
Yeah, man. I feel like so much of having kids is understanding that your job is just to be a witness
Yep.
and a support,
Yep.
emotional support, but that they don't have to have any particular kind of life.
Yep.
That's that's not your responsibility, and nor is it important. They will have a
True.
life, and their life will be their experience. And you could probably do things to fuck it up, but you can
Oh,
certainly
100%.
But you can certainly, there's nothing you have to do in order to make it right for them.
Yeah.
They'll just live their life.
What I'm learning is it's not, when she tells me stuff, she's not looking how to fix it. She's just looking for that sucks.
Yeah,
It's that's because I'm always trying to like I'm that
totally.
kind of person that if you're gonna tell me something like issues you're having, I try to find a fix for it. And I
Absolutely.
don't know why I'm that way. I just am. But starting to learn more that they don't want a fix. They just want someone to listen and just say that sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm working on that one too.
Yeah, it's tough.
But
All right. So, speaking of comics, we're finally to the point with the comics where you're now, transitioning to a comic book writer in addition to all the other cool things you're doing. So you've launched Strangeland Comics, and we're here to also talk about Time Sensitive #1.
that's
So
right.
for those that don't know about Time Sensitive, your new comic book line,
Yeah.
why don't we take a minute to talk about what that's about?
Awesome. Yeah. So time sensitive is about a guy named Caleb Stone whose wife disappears suddenly at a gas station in Los Angeles. And when he starts looking for her, everyone tells him that he was never married, that the woman he remembers waking up with that morning died in a car accident 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And he thinks he's going insane until this strange street kid, this mysterious girl, Tallulah, shows up and says, "Hey, I know why your wife was deleted."
That is incredible.
I always love starting with mystery hooks.
I
And
love that.
this was a moment that grabbed me right at the very beginning of this idea. And then it just expanded and expanded and expanded. It also was a way to start doing a kind of time travel that I've never seen before, that really starts with character and really starts with, you know, sci-fi trauma.
I love
The
that.
kind that messes with your head right away.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. So for that kind of a story, did you pull any inspiration from, like any already established works, or how did you come up with the idea?
Um, I think the maybe one of the very original ideas started with like, what would an updated quantum leap be like?
Okay.
I started thinking about, someone who is, you know, jumping through time, out of their control and, mixing that with a little bit of time bandits, someone who's lost in time and trying to find their way home. And then, started trying to figure out, well, like, well, what is the character in the middle of this? What if, I can take some of that European art house, movies from my childhood and mix it with the genre movies that I love, and really kind of start to really ground this in what is the experience when time changes, when the timelines change around you. And it's not just an adventure movie, but what if it's real? And then that starts to get really scary. And that's what's really exciting. So this is, a book that is both existentially terrifying, but also, like a total adventure thrill ride, also really funny, and also, incredibly moving and emotional love story at the core of it. And I'm someone who's always loved mashing genres together, and this is very much one of those.
Very, very cool. So, for people who, might be interested or, maybe who don't have, big, strong sci-fi ties, what are some, already established series that you could kind of compare time sensitive to?
Um, Well, Dave Goyer, the sci-fi
Hmm.
writer,
Yeah.
Batman Begins and Dark Knight, and he actually just read it and wrote me the most incredible quote. So I'll read you what he wrote.
Wow. That's incredible.
It was
Dave Goyer.
totally it was the most kind of unbelievable, thing ever to get like an actual blurb from Dave Goyer. But he wrote, Joshua Rubin's Time Sensitive is a glorious and lovingly rendered mashup of all things Matrix, Looper, dark, and more. Funny, moving, and freaky in all the right ways. The art by George Quill is jaw-droppingly gorgeous. Highly recommended. So,
Wow.
uh,
Well,
so
I'm sold.
Matrix, Looper, and Dark, apparently.
Wow. That's wow. That's really, really cool.
Amazing, right? So I
Absolutely.
definitely like I love, I love the Nolan movies. I love the way that he plays with time,
Yeah.
Tenet, Inception. I love, art house sci-fi movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once,
Mm,
Black Mirror, Looper. Like I love movies that are both sci-fi and grounded and that twist your head at the same time.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's the long-term plan for this series? Do you have like a certain set of issues planned out for it? Um, do you just kind of hope it kind of goes on as long as it can go on for? What are the plans for it?
So there's an initial 6 issue limited series that I'm going to be putting out through Kickstarter over the next year or so. The first issue is coming out in a few months, sorry, a few weeks, sooner than I can believe it. And then the second issue is already in production. My artist George is drawing it now. So it's once the 6 issues ends, it's very much a full story, but it also kind of opens up in a big way at the end to kind of reveal that everything you thought that this story is about is only a small part of a much, much bigger world. And we start to get a peek of that at the end. God willing, with success, I will get to continue exploring the story. But I also hope that at that point, I will be well into my next series as well. I have about a dozen different sci-fi series that I have developed, starting all of them kind of starting in those early years in Hollywood. And I have different artists and different writers that I'm working with through Strangeland Comics, which is my kind of boutique comic house that I've been building over this past year. Kickstarter is an amazing way to launch comics and introduce
Absolutely.
comics to new audiences. And I feel like I'm just at the beginning of it. This is comic number one of series number one, but very much, I hope, just the beginning.
Very, very cool. And yes, Strangeland and Fueled by Weird. I think that's a good mashup. Anything strange or weird is totally up my alley. So I'm very, very
Nice.
excited for you.
Nice.
Very, very
The,
excited.
the name Strangeland comes from Stranger in a Strange Land, the Robert Heinlein 1950s sci-fi book.
Oh,
Did
sure.
you ever get a chance to read that one?
I've not read that one, huh? I've heard of it. I've never read it though.
That one has always been in my head because it's about essentially a kid who is raised on Mars by Martians. Astronauts go there and they all die except for this baby. And he then comes back to Earth as a 20-year-old. And, and he's basically the stranger in a strange land coming to Earth. And it's so much about like, seeing the world through new eyes. And that idea has always fascinated me, how, the strangest world is not a foreign world, it's your own world seen in a new way.
That is cool. Very, very cool. All right. So you said the Kickstarter is coming out in a few weeks. I think you had mentioned July sometime. So we'll definitely it'll help get the link shared out. I'll put the link in the show notes. We'll share the link out with the pre-launch link with everybody
Awesome.
on social media so they can get signed up and make sure they can follow so they are notified as soon as you launch. Um,
Fantastic.
Very, very exciting news. Um, so before I let you go, I want to give you a chance to share a bit of advice with the creatives in podcast land,
Hmm.
just for a note to go out on.
A bit of advice to other
To
creators.
other creatives, yeah,
Yeah. I think the best advice that I have figured out in my middle-aged years is only fuck yes projects. If
that's
there's
great advice.
any way you're gonna have your day job, but you've got nights and weekends,
Yeah,
and you've got to make those nights and weekends work for you. Don't wait for anyone else to say yes. Do it yourself. Do it now.
there it is. That's some great advice.
Awesome,
All
man.
right, sir. So where can people stay up to date where can people find you online to stay up to date with everything coming from you and from Strangeland?
I'm on all the socials, but if you go to time sensitive slash strangelandcomics.com. That's the one you'll have down below. You can actually sign up now for the comic, drop $1 to reserve it before it launches, and there's an incredible art print by George Quill that we're giving away for people who reserve it for $1 ahead of time. So
Very,
please come join us, time sensitive slash strangelandcomics.com.
very cool. Now, for me, I'd like to thank Polygon Horizon. Their song Pizza Force is the song we use for the show. It's a fantastic song. Go check it out and go show them some love on Bandcamp. You can find Fueled by Weird on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Shoot me an email at fueledbyweird@gmail.com. You can find the show on YouTube, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts. And Fueled by Weird, along with the Nerdy Manroom show with Hassel and Monster, Hassel's Review, and Big Rob's House of Entertainment and No Chinese Food. We all make up the Stay Weird Network. It's a brand new podcast network dedicated to bringing some awesome back to the internet. Check us out on YouTube at Stay Weird Network, on Instagram at Stay Weird Network, and shoot us an email at stayweirdnetwork@gmail.com. And
Love it.
I'd like to thank my sponsor, the Zone Collectibles in Tifton, Georgia. They're your one-stop shop for comics, collectibles, and so much more. Now, if you like the show, please leave a review and tell your friends because word of mouth is my friend. And remember, kids, life's too short to be normal, so stay weird. Joshua, thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight, man.
Amen, brother. That was great. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Absolutely.
you having me on so much.
Absolutely.